Well, hey, everybody. I am here for another awesome real estate chat with one of the best in all of Canada when it comes to multifamily investing. Now, Cory pointed out that we both have German heritage, which means every letter in our last names are pronounced. So the K in my last name is Knull, not Null. And the E in his name, I've been calling him Cory Sperle for years, but it's actually Cory Sperle. So there you go. If you ever go to Germany, pronounce every letter. So, Cory, really, really nice to have you on our Facebook real estate chat. How's it going today?
Great, James, and thanks for the very warm and welcoming introduction. I appreciate that.
Hey, you know what? It's my pleasure. And Cory, for those of you guys that don't know, is one of the top guys in definitely in Western Canada. He's a prairie guy. He owns a massive real estate portfolio and he's a thought leader in the space. So he does a bunch of leadership and coaching and mentoring for people that want to get into multifamily as well. So there is no better person to be talking to right now about what's happening in multi than Cory. And we actually just had a really cool conversation about one of the things that I think you need to pay ultra super close attention to when you're acquiring multifamily, which is deferred maintenance. And we were just kind of riffing and shooting the breeze, and I said, "Whoa, stop! We got to record this because this is something that people need to hear about." So, Cory, talk to us about the concept of deferred maintenance when we're analyzing and looking at acquiring multifamily buildings.
Yeah, thanks, James. Yeah, we just had a great chat on that, and I'm always learning stuff in the space, and even the most sophisticated investors that I know you have gotten bitten with this one, at one point or another. And if you own a building that's 40 years old, 30 years old, even new, eventually you're going to have to get hit with this. So when I talk deferred maintenance, I'm talking about really high ticket items like the roof system, the boiler system. A roof will have to typically be replaced every 15 years. Boilers, kind of hit and miss. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Decks, windows, parking lots. These are things that are not on the real estate pro forma, on your income and expenses. Your repair and maintenance on your pro forma is typically just for upkeep of the building, but it doesn't take these items into account. And you can get bit with these as an investor, and mistakes with deferred maintenance can be fatal, unfortunately.
Yeah, they'll really, really kill you because, just like Cory's talking about, you got your pro forma, and the pro forma is meant to spit out a net operating income. And as we know in multifamily, net operating income over cap rate equals building value. So you're going to see in your pro forma, depending on your flavor, you might do something like, $900 per suite per year for repairs and maintenance. Or you might be the kind of person that's a percentage person, 5% per year for repairs and maintenance. That just covers things like tenant turnover, fixing up the suites, fixing a drippy tap, repairing a squeaky lock. That's not the same as a $40,000 boiler. So, Cory, when you're analyzing buildings, like how does this fit into your matrix of calculation for a building, especially for something that it's like an iceberg. You're like, oh yeah, the boiler is 8 years old. All of a sudden, you've owned the building 15 years, and here you are with a boiler.
Well, I'll tell you what I used to do incorrectly, and then I'll tell you what I do now. I mean, one of the first buildings I bought was, a building in Nade in Edmonton, and it was a 15 suiter, and my hot water tank literally blew up the day I closed, and it was not even that old, right? So this is a case of it doesn't matter how new the appliance is, this can and will happen to you. You have to get ready for it, and you have to, expect it. Now, with the roof, for example, I've gone into at least two deals where I've had a roof that I knew needed to be replaced. I was timing my JVs for 5 years, right? My enter and exit. The trajectory of Edmonton markets, I could deliver a really good return to my investors in 5 years. I thought, I'm going to gamble with this. I'm going to leave this off the pro forma. I'm going to make this the next investor's problem. And every single time I did that, I got stung with it and I had to replace it. So now I'm very much, when I buy a building, I'm taking the view of the buyer and the seller. So now I'm actually accounting for these items. So I'll either try to get, something back from the seller, some kind of concession, maybe some decent financing, or maybe we split the cost of the repairs, depending on what the upside is. Now if it's a building that's completely a hunk of crap that I need a lot to do with it, I mean, or high vacancies, that's going to get discounted in the price. But now I really look at these items a lot closer now. Generally the boiler system I found I'm okay with that. I mean, I had a building in Edmonton that I had a boiler that had a stamp on that was 1900 and that thing ran just fine, no problems. So I'm okay with a 30-year-old boiler. I've actually have a brand new boiler in a building, and that's been the worst nightmare of my life. And I've had to actually replace it with another new boiler.
Oh
So
no.
you don't exactly get what you pay for. Sometimes old is better, but the roof, the windows, the decks, and the parking lots are ones you absolutely must look at.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, you're right. You can't just stick your head in the sand and pretend they're not going to pop up because real estate investing is a long-term game. This isn't something you acquire and liquidate quickly for the most part. I mean, at least for my portfolio, we do our holds on like 5-year terms unless there's extraneous circumstances. So, 5 years goes by in a blink of an eye sometimes and then all of a sudden you
Yeah.
blink and there's a boiler waiting for you. So that's a really, really great perspective. Now when you're going through a building as part of your due diligence, the thing about multifamily, for those of you guys that don't know, when we buy single family, well, you walk through the whole darn house before you put in an offer. Multifamily, maybe if you're lucky, you're going to get to walk through the hallways and look in the utility room. And if there happens to be a suite vacant, you can peek your head in one out of, 18, 24, however many suites. So we don't actually get to poke around the building until an offer is in play. So Cory, what does that look like? I mean, how do you make decisions about whether a building is right for you once you get to do the full meal deal on the tour?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's the biggest difference. When I mentor people, and they're like, "Well, I got to go see it first." Well, they're not going to let you in there first of all. I mean, chances are the tenants probably don't know the building's for sale. There's no for sale sign there, so you really have to make a strong offer based on what you think that you can get the building at on your first try. You know, the worst thing you can do as an investor is get it under contract at any price, right? Just to lock it up and then try to negotiate down later. I hear some people teaching that strategy, and it's the worst thing you can do. You need to. So what I do first, James, is I get the rent roll. So I take the rent roll and I go to a mortgage broker. I figure out what I can get for a loan, the framework, plus or minus 10%. I try to hit the value around plus or minus 10% on the first try. Okay. I do a rental survey. So I survey the area. What is the actual market rent? Where's rents going? And what's the vacancy rate? So armed with that information, with the loan opinion, is enough to make the offer. So if my offer is accepted, the next step is I'll do a walkthrough within 7 days. And that's where I'll have my property manager or contractor. And then we go through and we look at all the suites, right? And then we decide, okay, what do we need to do to this? And, our conversation earlier, I never really used to do this. I used to look at, here's $1,000 and Joe Blow is renting in there. His suite's 20 years old. That doesn't really bother me. Now I'm taking the full replacement cost of if that guy moves out the next day, what's it going to cost me in terms of time and money to replace that? And I'm factoring that into my costs as well. And if I'm asking for a price reduction, I'm doing it from the seller within a week of that offer. So I'm not wasting his time or my time. And that's some of the things I've changed over the last few years, and it's worked out.
Well, I'm going to riff off of one of those little points you made, which is, we because we don't get all the information on the offer until after the offer is pending, you got to be respectful of the seller's time because in
Yes.
the multifamily world, there aren't that many people that own these buildings, and there's even fewer realtors that operate in the space. So we all get it. We understand that you don't get the full information until after the offer is in play, but review that information quickly so that if after getting all the information, the building's a no, be fast with your nose. Be fast with your nose, and then you stay on everybody's list for the next deal that comes up. Because if you keep a building tied up for 2 months and then look at it and then say no for a reason you could have said no to in a week, that person whose time you locked up for 2 months is not going to be so enthusiastic about doing business with you next time.
No, and to be fair, like there's usually if it's a sophisticated realtor, usually they have a data room already populated. So the second your offer is accepted and you give them the deposit, they just have to hit a button and there's a mass data dump onto you. Well,
Yeah,
now you have all the documents immediately. So now the onus is on you. So within 7 days, 10 days, there's no reason for you to tie up that building unless you're absolutely sure. Now, there is reports that come down the line later, right? That like appraisal, phase one, building condition report that you may be able to retrade on or deal with later.
yeah.
But in my experience, James, 95% of the time, within a week, I know exactly pretty close to what I'm going to pay for that building and if the deal is going to work or not.
100%. 100%. Well, Cory, that was a lot of very, very insightful information in a very quick conversation. So, you know what? I've tagged you in the post. So, guys, go into the description of the post, click Cory, slide on into those DMs if you want to talk multifamily in Canada, because he's one of the thought leaders. He's one of the gurus. So, if you want to, he's been around a heck of a long time, and he owns a lot of property. So, and Cory, correct me if I'm wrong, but you love talking about multifamily real estate with people.
I love talking about multifamily real estate all across the country. So it doesn't matter if you're in Nova Scotia, Ontario. I know a little bit about every market. Prairies is my bread and butter. I know that market better than most. But I can talk about it all day long with
Love it.
anybody for sure.
Cool. Well, hey, drop him a line if you want to talk. Everybody, have a good one, Cory.
Thank you. Thanks for the time, James.